This episode brought to you by Restaurant Systems Pro. With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest, host of the National Restaurant Owners Podcast, the Commercial Real Estate School Podcast, and co-host of the soon-to-launch Restaurant Idea Factory Podcast, Kyle Inserra. My man, Kyle, are you feeling unstoppable today?
I am feeling unstoppable today.
Dude, I love talking to you, man. So Kyle's more than just a guest. He's a friend. He's a repeat guest. He was episode 769. So if you want to hear Kyle's come up, the lessons he's learned along the ways, the mistakes he's made in his career as a restaurant professional, then head over to restaurantunstoppable.com/769.
We may have touched on it last time, but unlike residential real estate, commercial real estate, you get involved in a specific asset class, they call it. The asset class I happen to be in, which is very niche, is retail. Niche it down even further, it's restaurants. Restaurants and landlords realize they need each other. This isn't just, it was kind of adversarial at some points. Not necessarily that was always the case, but it is now crystal clear, or should be crystal clear to restaurants, that even over location, even over your lease, is the relationship with your landlord.
Why is that the case?
Aside from if the shit hits the fan again, are we going to be able to communicate and understand, like, hey, if I don't have people coming through the doors, it's a problem not only for me, but for you.
Yeah.
Because we're in this together. So,
and
of course the landlord's going to have a little bit of a more stern look, have their magnifying out, looking at the business and how they're going to, do I really want this person in case, the shit does hit the fan again? Am I going to want to, do I think that they have the ability to push through it, or the financial wherewithal to at least pay me something, so there's other factors to consider. But, ultimately, I think you want to be able to communicate.
Yeah.
Just like any business relationship, you don't have to be best friends, but can we communicate here and understand what this is all about?
I think traditionally the restaurant landlord relationship was more transactional, but I think another variable, not just the pandemic, but over time, as retail goes away, all this retail space it's getting harder and harder to get things that work in retail space. And one of the few things that work, which is why you see these developers becoming restaurateurs, is because the only thing that works in that retail space is restaurants. There's very few things that work in retail aside from restaurants. So like 100%, like retail is becoming more of an experiential space, not a place to go get things.
Yeah.
What's going through your mind?
That's a very, it's a very prevalent, prominent conversation happening in the retail space, dry use retail, what's going to happen to them, and creating an experience around it, right?
So you say dry use retail, you're talking just like a box?
Yeah, like a cell phone store or clothing store where you go in there, there's no food necessarily. But by me, in Norwalk, in Connecticut, there's the Sono. It was like the only mall being built. It was slated to open right around COVID time. And there's a bar and a restaurant on the third floor. They realize that there's a need for people to, people's time is valuable, right? So, hey, I'm going to go out, have a drink, I'm going to do some shopping, I'm going to do everything. If you can do it in one place and have it be an enjoyable experience, even better, right? I think those are opportunities for restaurants, looking outside the box for things like in a department store, in some sort of development that maybe you wouldn't have considered otherwise. Maybe you can do a trimmed down version of your concept in a smaller footprint. I think there's a lot of different opportunities there. Airports, hotels.
So I'm going to back up, make sure I'm picking up the big trends. The original question are, what are the big trends that are happening right now? First was the relationship between landlord and restaurateur is becoming much stronger. It's much more we need each other relationship. And it sounds like the other thing is the footprint is getting smaller. People are realizing that I don't need the same physical space as I once did. What do you think is driving that?
Well, there's the takeout component depending on the concept, right? Like that's if you look at your numbers, I've seen some places have seen increases, 20, 50% in their takeout. And that's saying, like, I don't need to be on the corner of Main and Main. I can use a smaller space and not such a expensive neighborhood and do just fine. As anyone in the restaurant business knows, more sales, more square, if you're going to do more sales out of a bigger space, it's going to cost you more money, right? So you got to make sure you're weighing all those factors. Can I afford to pay this rent? Am I still going to need all this space based on how my sales are going out the door? So a lot of different things to consider. And then, if you are a restaurant that is healthy and you're full service dining, maybe you have an opportunity to do some smaller footprint stuff with different variations of your brands, ghost kitchens, virtual concepts. You know, these automation machines like Brooklyn Dumpling Shop, and I know they're doing like a pizza vending machine type deal. You know, I think you have to look at other income streams, you know, and I think that's another thing.
That's a huge vertical, by the way. If you're a restaurateur and you're listening to this and you're trying to figure out how can I diversify my channels of revenue, my income, how can I use my space for different things, vending machines are becoming like next level.
Yeah.
And if you want to get into the passive income business-ish, I should say, because it's not completely passive because you still got to feed the vending machines, but you're paying people to prep. And half the deal with these vending machines today are just doing the prep work and then having somebody who does logistics with the delivering that prep food to the machines. But you, as the restaurateur, can own all the machines and then contract. You already have people that you're paying to do prep. Just add this to their prep list, and it's usually not super heavy lifting prep. It's usually just cutting vegetables,
right?
You know, and then you could even contract out a courier, like somebody, or just bring on an extra employee to move it from the restaurant to your vending machines. And there's tons of opportunity there because people haven't caught on to this yet. It's only in big cities. So if you're in those medium to small size cities, like your Manchester, New Hampshires, your Portsmouth, New Hampshires, I don't know the other small markets, but I know New Hampshire, but like those like, I don't know, wherever there's a Class D airport. And that's probably something that doesn't translate well for our listeners either.
Or non-international airport.
No, non-major cities, but still decent-sized cities. Because here's the other variable. People from the big cities are moving to those medium-sized cities, but they still expect and they're conditioned to have that level of option. So like, I think that there's legs for that shit. What's going through your mind?
You know, it's restaurants we're so used to, right? I think they learned quickly, like, man, you envision the old school restaurant owner. He was also the maitre d', right? Mm-hmm. So he would love that connection with guests coming in. Oh, hey, here's Eric and his girlfriend. Here's G and his wife. I know they love that table. That whole level of hospitality is fantastic. But now it can happen in so many different ways. Digitally, you know, they can see your brand at an airport vending machine. Like, oh my God, you can get the the Cobb salad from this place at the airport. That's phenomenal. Like, that's great. I love that you can get it. Is it going to be exactly the same? No. That's why there's still going to be that opportunity to capture that in-house business because you're still staying top of mind. Like, if I go to the airport and I really love the Cobb salad from this guy's restaurant and I can get some version of it, you're staying top of mind, right? So it's like that omnipresence kind of thing that most people think about for other brands. Yeah. You know, you see Gap, Banana Republic, on the train, on the billboard, online. Same thing, right? Like your product, get it in people's mouths any which way you can. In terms of digital, I'm saying like you can still have a digital conversation with your guests. So not necessarily ghost kitchens and things of that nature, but more just like the conversation, staying top of mind. But ghost kitchens and virtual concepts for sure, right? Like you're seeing the big guys do that all over the place.
This idea that like you're not limited by your brick and mortar anymore. You got to get outside of that. Like you're limited when you have a brick and mortar. You're limited to how many asses can fit inside your like on the seats in your restaurant. When you go to digital, you're not limited at all. You're limited by literally how much food can I cook right now. You're limited by your throughput.
Yep.
Right. What's going through your mind?
You know, you have a box that you're leasing most likely, right? How can you maximize that revenue out of there? It doesn't take line cooks and chefs that much longer to create, if you're prepping salads, right? If to prep a couple salads to put in the walk-in to be picked up by the guy to take to the salad vending machine, it doesn't take that much more time. So you need to maximize productivity. And in that thought, you're also providing more labor hours, right? So you're looking to sustain a business, right? When you look at a restaurant, I always think like, well, I don't just employ these guys. Well, they have a husband, a wife, they have kids, they have, dance classes, they have school tuitions to pay for. How can we keep everybody, afloat here and happy? And if you're not looking at opportunities like that and you're strictly relying on things coming through the door, you're missing on huge opportunities, right? Like there's a lot of different opportunities you've alluded to. And also, you're not really doing the right thing as a business owner. You're not providing enough. You're maybe not providing enough hours. You could be bottling your sauces. I mean, farmers market, start small, whatever it is. You literally, I don't think, can do something that somebody's going to be like, that's crazy. Yeah. They're literally opening up restaurants in the metaverse, and let's be real.
I still think that's kind of crazy. I'm not gonna lie.
That is a little crazy, but
like it's still, like